Hello everybody, it is the me, Game Penguin 21, and today, well, welcome to quite possibly one of the best movement shooters ever. Well, top 5 at least, and this one is different because it has a hoverboard, which you don't often see in these interesting games. Okay, so this is a game that I have been on my backlog and list for a while, and well, I finally pulled the trigger and decided to get it because I don't know if it was on sale, but it's about $20. And there's another game out there that's worth even has $5 and has even more interesting things, but that's going to be a different video. There are a few games that I picked up within the past week or two, but this one was definitely the one that I wanted to talk about the most, and it is called Echo Point Nova. Now, Echo Point Nova is, quite honestly, an interesting concept for a game, or at least a movement shooter in general. Now, while most movement shooters seem to have various rushing and jumps and slams and stuff, and this does have that completely. This also has a hoverboard type mechanic. A hoverboard type mechanic you can actually kind of see, and also has the ability for you to kind of go upside down. You can do some pretty sick, nasty moves, and having things such as multiple jumps and explosives and open world maps and collectibles and all these awesome tricks on your hoverboard. Yeah, it's definitely an amazing movement gimmick, but I don't know if that's going to sell most people on this game. It's pretty cool, and definitely one that I would say if you like any sort of movement shooters and just want a different flavor of that, this is most definitely for you. And again, it usually goes on to do sort of small arenas and stuff where it's very wide and open and kind of the anti-ultra kill, if that makes sense. I'm not sure if there's anything such as parrying or stuff like that, but there is such things as beating people in the face with a pickaxe, so quite cool. Now, we're gonna go kind of quickly through some of these. I really wanted to mainly talk about the gameplay, but we can just touch on the story initially, as there's not really a whole lot to it, but we're gonna go through it just to be safe and to kind of cover everything. So the main premise of this seems to be, at least from what I can gather, is you're fighting a giant evil organization that has taken up residence in this sort of planetary area that's kind of a bunch of floating islands, place, not really sure where specifically, but Echo Point Nova, I guess, is what the location is called. Regardless, there's a lot of bad guys, and they're looking for these artifact type things of very immense power that are existed in this world. And you are tasked with defeating this faction and getting stronger. And frankly, the story here is a little bit weak, and I was only kind of half paying attention. But what is interesting and unique about it is that it mostly takes place over a text chat thing in the world. There is some back and forth messages between the evil doers and some of the other stuff. And again, when looking for the different stuff and reading things is a little bit and again, you can really kind of miss the story. Overall, that's really not why you're here, and just following the main quest will kind of lead you down a path of going into a couple different bosses. I'll touch on those bosses in a little bit here. But there is a big thing about this as well, is that there is a bunch of collectibles and collectathon type items, mainly to kind of upgrade and give your guy more strength, mainly in the terms of these energy or excessive balls or something like that basically you collect them and get these agility points, and then can get things such as more jumps, more grappling points, and etc. There's also different places around the map that you are points of entrance that act as both fast travel points as well as points to get upgrades and things. And there's an interesting upgrade system that I will talk about in the gameplay portion of this, but overall, the actual story of the game, to kind of wrap this up, is you're basically going up against an evil organization. Stereotypical evil organization, but overall you're not really necessarily here for that. Now, let's talk on the gameplay. So you have your typical movement shooter type affair, with that being you have a couple of unique, interesting quirks. Mainly that you have the ability to completely invert your camera and look upside down at the world if you're kind of flying and going through the air. Quite interesting. You also have things such as a grappling hook and a few other things. mainly the hoverboard mechanic, which I would recommend that if you're going to be using it a lot, set it to toggle. It's set to basically just hold in the menu if you want to save your pinky some strength and not like get some cramping in there. But it basically doubles your base movement speed and acts as kind of an infinite stamina jog, but with more momentum and actual cool things. And a lot of the arenas are actually set up for that, in the fact that there are a bunch of ramps that go ups and downs, and a bunch of places to grind along to actually get into increasing things such as air control, and also give you a ground pound in some cases. And of course there's a really cool grappling hook and double and even like sometimes triple or even more mid-air jumps, which all kind of flow together in this very amazing way, almost like watching a kind of interesting dance. And again, when you're grappling and when you're doing all this other stuff, the animations still kind of play and they still don't really interrupt things. And that's where a lot of movement shooters tend to actually kind of lose me in some cases, when the movement interrupts some of the shooting mechanics. This works better for places such as if it's not reliant fully on movement, but like, like a tactical FPS shooter where running and after not completing the animation can really get you out of the way of that. And it's kind of one of those things that's just a little bit but overall with this one, it really kind of knows how to make the combat flow very nicely and to not interrupt this thing. And with that being said, the entire soundtrack also feeds into this amazing, interesting gameplay loop. And it all bleeds together in a very popping bubble wrap kind of trance, but in like a very good way, a very entertaining amount. You're not necessarily, again, there to specifically for the story, but you're there to kind of go from arena to arena and overall play out this story of defeating these things. Now, the whole map is outlined from the word go, and you can getting around is actually ending up hard part. In fact, for most of the places have little places in terms of health and movement, and it's kind of a bit tricky to explain, but as you grow and get more firepower and more movement tech and perks, the difficulty kind of ramps up accordingly depending on where you are on the map. And each area has a variety of enemies, each with their own strengths and weaknesses, from grunts that can set up things such as jump pads to your locations and guys with shields, all the way up to giant mechs that shoot out missiles and people that can shoot fire from their hands. Quite an interesting combination of things, and you do have some interplay between some of that stuff as again you get stronger and can eventually extinguish some of the fires and possibly set fires yourself, and it's quite interesting. But each of them can be defeated fairly easily, especially in terms of the mechs, where you actually have a kind of weak point at the exhaust point at the top of their thing. So quite an interesting way of things for happening there. Now, there's also a bunch of varieties of different weapons, from shotguns, SMGs, pistols, snipers, etc., and even some explosives in there. My personal favorite right now seems to be some sort of burst pistol that you get, one of the things, as well as a double-barreled shotgun, which that is a fun weapon to use. Of course, there's also things that also add to the movement in this context, such as explosive riding, which, doesn't actually happen in real life, but it's actually kind of freaking cool to be that way. And let me just say that this whole game is very gorgeous and beautiful looking. Over with the variety of enemies and the various soundtracks and things, just the actual beauty of how this game looks and the style of it really, really sets an interesting tone, and I love every aspect of that style out there. Now, again, the main thing that you're going to be doing is you're trying to be clearing the map, and there's a couple different ways that you can level up and level up your character accordingly. You have of course the exercise balls, or the agility balls, that are basically these collectible balls that are scattered all around the map that give you more things such as jumps, more grapples, more movement tech alongside of it. So that requires a fair amount. So clearing the board and getting from point A to point B by collecting these balls is also oftentimes very important and can actually end up helping a lot of things. The other thing is that you end up getting more health. I'm not sure exactly how you get more health specifically. Maybe there's like specific perks or specific ways of things, but getting more health, of course, is very necessary because at the very beginning you're kind of a little bit of a glass cannon. As far as getting more weapons, those are achieved through the second method of kind of collecting things, that being these scanning objectives. These scanning objectives are basically an area that you activate a kind of scan button, and then you have to kill an X amount of enemies, usually an increasing amount, in order to open the box and then get the new weapon. According to at least the amount of weapons that are there, there is a number of pistols, shotguns, SMGs, and all the extra stuff, and they each take up their own slots, and you can actually end up mastering each of the weapons by just using them. You get things such as scopes, extended mags, higher fire rates, bigger and more damaging outputs, and stuff like that. And it all, again, works really well whenever you're kind of in game. And again, the leveling system of this is more eventually going to lead to cosmetics, but that's not really necessary, as most of the stuff that is there, you can kind of tailor your playstyle to that. But an interesting method of leveling up is actually that getting the cosmetics in here is actually kind of encouraged for a lot of reasons. Of course, one of the first things that I found was that you found a pair of headphones, and those remained stuck to my head like they do everywhere whenever I'm talking about anything having to do with my character. Now, yes, obviously, you can get these different cosmetics, and they do actually end up working with your character because they do look kind of cool, I guess, because this game also does have a co-op mode, but I never really experienced that because I mainly played in single player, and in single player there's already enough things happening, so adding another person to that might just make things a little bit crazier. But the different cosmetics actually add to you and give you more perk points, which is actually something that is kind of necessary to get more perks and get more out of the perk system, which uses a point buy system pretty much, where each one of them has different numbers to it, and you can get more as you level and clear the board more. And again, there is definitely ways to do this. And it's not just in the scanning portions either. There are certain cosmetics and there are certain other things that are hidden within the environment and in some of the nooks and crannies. So exploration is very much encouraged and very much rewarded for just kind of exploring and going through the enemies and taking them out. I know that there are several locations out there that aren't necessarily marked on the map, but that have actual chests there that give you more cosmetics or more perk points, or more perks specifically that give you more firepower, etc. And it all just kind of blends together, much like how the combat initially itself blends together in that same way. The last thing that I wanted to highlight about this is how the game does amazingly well with the sense of progress. Each battle and every scan and every boss feels like some sort of progress. Even when you're just going around and flying around the map, it's all just kind of seamlessly interesting to me. And though, again, I am taking my time with the story here, and this is more of a first impressions, I am about like 3 to 4 hours into the game, and I've only now gotten to the first boss, which kind of shows you the pace that I take this game at. I really wanted to immerse myself into this sort of world and stuff and the actual lore in it, but that just wasn't really there, so I ended up just going with the actual just the actual gameplay itself, which, again, much like how Ultra Kill, you don't really need to do the same thing. If you're, again, just here for the gameplay, you came to the right buffet, my person. To give a more interesting, some tips and things that the game actually doesn't necessarily tell you, the diamond on your screen mainly shows you where you can grapple, and you can even grapple onto clouds, which I didn't know initially, so that's a very fun mechanic that you can have there. Apparently it latches onto like the crystal particles or something, so be advised, there is a lot more grappling points than you might initially think. Using momentum is very important. Making sweeping arcs across the arenas is better than trying to turn quickly. If you're trying to initially turn quickly, getting off the board and then getting on the board is actually a good way to kind of slow down the momentum and then try to build it back up if you're trying to get to a specific thing. Using it in like a small tight quarters for that, you oftentimes are getting on and off board pretty much there. That's a pretty fun mechanic, no or less. You should try to get into the notion of hip firing more than actually using the regular aiming down sights, unless you're using, say, even the sniper rifle. But even then, I would still recommend getting used to using more of that, because you're going to be mostly on the move trying to avoid the incoming fire as well as the outgoing fire. And simply just trying to walk across a thing is not always viable. Try and clear as many of the scanning areas and as many of the general areas as possible, because you can usually tell by the green flag there. that gives you a lot of progress, and again opens up the map especially. Checking all the little nooks and crannies is also again very rewarding, as I mentioned earlier. But again, utilizing those environments and realizing that you can actually destroy things using the pickaxe is more important than just like not, because I definitely found a couple of little hidden areas that I didn't initially think to look at, but then when I hit it with the pickaxe, I revealed like, oh, there was actually a little perk point or an actual perk or something that was just hidden away and under a specific thing. So looking around like that is always important. Finally, if you fall out of the map because you're again in the sky here, just hit tab to respawn, and you will just respawn wherever you were standing last, not wherever you were on your board last. So just know that. To conclude, this is quite possibly one of my favorite movement shooters of a recent memory that I've played. It has a very unique mechanics that I haven't seen before, mainly in the fact of the whole inverting your character upside down type thing, or being able to use a hoverboard across the actual environment, and even just the environment in general was something interesting that it just drew my attention to it. A very good feeling of progression alongside the actual story of the game, despite the fact that the story is probably its weakest element. I wouldn't call it a full-on sandbox per se. It does have a bunch of sandbox elements. At the very best, I would call it an open world arena shooter, which is kind of interesting because I've never actually heard or seen of anything like this in particular. Overall, I say if you would like a more calming version of Ultra Kill rather than having the high octane just and heavy metal of that, and want a more, say, calming almost lo-fi like experience that you can kind of hop in and out of, this is definitely one I would say is in the upper S tier for you to actually check out. Again, Echo Point Nova is available on the Steam store, and I don't know if it's available on Epic Games, but it's available for around $20, $15 to $20. Definitely would say it's worth the amount that you put forward on that. It is a very good game, again, very lovely, and I would say support this type of innovation in that personal way. With all that being said, if you like what it is that I do, want to support in any other way, shape, or form other than like and subscribe, which is always enough, links down to everything in the description below. I'm looking to hit 1.5k subscribers by the end of the year. If you want to help me out with that, again, hit those buttons down there, and again, check me on out. I do stream every Sunday, single player Sunday. We're streaming a bunch of stuff. I think this past Sunday I'm actually doing some, I'm engaging in the Steam Next Fest, so check out that VOD, which would be posted on the day. But this next Sunday, we're probably going to go back into playing some Roblox Blox Tales, trying to finish out Demo 4. So again, check out all that other stuff. With all that being said, my name is GamePenguin21. Thank you all again so much for watching, and a peace.